Wow, okay. So you really sent us down a rabbit hole this time with these sources you sent about the Grand Canyon.
Yeah,
And some of the stuff we found just throws everything you thought you knew about the Grand Canyon right out the window.
out the window.
Yeah. I mean, forget slow rivers carving rock over millions of years.
Right?
Today, we're diving into some really alternative ideas about how the Grand Canyon actually got there.
Yeah.
Specifically, we're looking at that YouTube interview you sent called The Best Interview, Discharge Mysteries of the Grand Canyon Cliff High Explorer's Guide to Sci-Fi.
Right.
So in this deep dive, we're going to try to pull out the most mind-blowing, head-scratching concepts from this interview about the Grand Canyon's origins. And then we're going to go even further and explore some really future-forward ideas that came up as we were researching all this.
Sounds good.
So let's jump right in with this idea called the Thunderbolt theory.
The Thunderbolt theory, yeah, that's a good place to start.
What is...
Well, it's really interesting how they start this whole line of questioning.
Okay.
It starts with Dan Smith.
Okay.
And he is super skeptical of the standard, river erosion explanation.
No.
He's like, huh, really?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't buy it.
Yeah.
And it's because he's seen both the Grand Canyon and the Badlands. And he noticed a visual difference.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So slow river erosion usually leaves behind softer, more stratified formations.
Okay.
But the Grand Canyon, especially those deep cuts,
Right.
it has this look that's almost sudden, it's fractured.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, in different ways.
So it's not gradual.
No, it doesn't look gradual.
It's like something happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
So that's kind of what opens the door to these other possibilities.
Okay. And then they bring up the Thunderbolt theory.
Yeah, the Thunderbolt theory.
Which is suggesting something huge.
Yeah.
Right. Basically an electrical discharge.
An electrical discharge between planets or something.
Yeah, like lightning, but on a cosmic scale.
Yeah, it's like lightning on steroids.
Yeah.
Basically, a huge spark of plasma.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, now that sounds pretty out there.
I know, it sounds crazy.
But the way they explain it, they
Right.
draw these parallels with regular lightning here on Earth.
Yeah, exactly. Think about how lightning works.
Okay.
A lot of times, it starts from the ground up, even though we think of it as coming down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we see that bright flash from the sky
Uh-huh.
and think that's where it starts.
Right.
But often it's actually initiating from the ground.
Huh. I never knew that.
And then there's the effect lightning has when it hits the ground.
Oh, okay.
It can cause the materials in the ground, like sand, to crystallize
Okay.
and become more tightly bound together.
Yeah.
They call this coherence.
Coherence.
Yeah, and these formations, they create, when that sand gets fused by the electrical energy,
Mm-hmm.
it often has these branching patterns,
Interesting.
very distinctive patterns.
Okay.
And here's where it gets crazy. They're saying we see similar formations, but obviously massively scaled up in the Grand Canyon.
Oh.
All those intricate, sometimes seemingly random patterns in the canyon walls.
Yeah.
They're saying maybe those were formed by huge electrical forces
Okay.
that fused and shaped the rock, just like lightning fuses sand.
Yeah.
But obviously on a way bigger scale.
On a geological scale.
Yeah.
That is wild.
And there's also the erosion to think about.
Yeah.
The source mentions that the downstream side of the Grand Canyon
Mm-hmm.
doesn't seem as eroded as you'd expect.
Oh, really?
Yeah, if it's just a river slowly carting it out over millions of years.
You'd think it'd be more even,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's not.
Right.
So what are they saying?
Well, they think maybe that initial electrical event
Okay.
somehow changed how porous the rock is on the downstream side.
Oh, interesting.
So it's less vulnerable to being worn away.
Okay.
Yeah, and then on the upstream side, you see more of that initial impact,
Interesting.
which makes sense if the energy came from that direction.
Wow. So the way the rock erodes or doesn't erode is like a clue.
Yeah, exactly. It all ties in.
That's amazing.
And then there's the whole thing about the run.
Yeah, they talk about that a lot.
Oh, yeah, that's mind-boggling.
With a lightning strike, the fusion happens over a few millimeters or centimeters.
Right. Tiny.
But in the Grand Canyon, we're talking hundreds of miles.
Hundreds of miles.
It's the same principle. This fusion caused by a massive electrical discharge.
Yeah.
But it's just amplified to this crazy degree.
It's hard to even imagine.
Yeah.
And that leads into a whole different way of thinking about the solar system
Oh, yeah.
and even the sun itself.
Okay, so how does the sun play into this?
Well, what they're saying goes against the standard astrophysics model.
Okay.
So right now we think of the sun as powered by nuclear fusion in its core.
Yeah, like a giant nuclear reactor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the source here, they're presenting this idea of an electrical universe.
An electrical universe.
Yeah, where the sun isn't a nuclear reactor.
Okay.
It's more like this huge mass of heavy elements.
Okay, what kind of elements?
Like iron, mainly in the form of hematite, but also gold, silver, and a bunch of compressed heavy gases.
Wow. Okay, so not hydrogen and helium like we learned in school?
Not really, no.
Interesting. Okay, so if it's not nuclear fusion, what makes the sun so hot and bright?
Well, they're not saying it doesn't emit light and heat and radiation.
Right.
It's just doing it through a different process.
Okay, so what are they saying?
It's kind of like a cosmic arc welder, I guess you could say.
A cosmic arc welder.
Yeah, and as it's moving through space,
Hmm.
it's constantly releasing these gases.
Okay.
And the friction and interaction with the stuff in interstellar space causes those gases to become ionized.
Ionized. So like electrically charged?
Yeah, that's what makes it light up in an electrical sense.
Wow. Okay.
So our solar system in this model is basically inside this ionized cell of energized gas.
Oh, wow.
And the Earth and all the other planets are in this area behind the sun called the coma.
The coma. Okay, and what's that?
It's kind of like a vacuum that trails behind the sun as it moves.
Okay, so we're like in the sun's wake.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so where do the Voyager spacecraft fit into all of this?
Well, this theory suggests that they haven't actually left the solar system.
Oh, really?
They've just hit the edge of this ionized cell, and that's what they're detecting.
Oh, so that electrical hiss Voyager picked up.
That's the boundary of this energetic bubble.
Wow, okay.
And then that leads to the theory about how Venus got here.
Oh, yeah. Venus is weird.
It's a strange one.
Spinning the wrong way.
Opposite direction to most of the planets.
And its orbit is odd, too.
Yeah.
So they're saying it wasn't always part of our solar system.
That's their theory, yeah.
Wow. So how did it get captured?
Well, as it was getting pulled in,
Hmm?
there was a huge amount of electrical energy that needed to be discharged,
Okay.
like neutralized somehow.
And how would that happen?
They're saying there were these massive lightning bolts
Lightning bolts between what?
between planets.
Between planets.
Yeah, like from Mars to Venus, and then Earth to Venus, and then Venus to the sun.
Wow. So like a cosmic electrical circuit
Yeah, exactly.
trying to balance everything out.
Yeah, neutralize the energy.
So Venus was like a rogue planet that got sucked in
Right.
and caused all this electrical chaos.
And that supposedly went on for months.
Months of lightning between planets.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild image.
Yeah, it is.
And they even talk about the colors of the lightning.
Oh, yeah. What were they?
So between Mars and Venus, it was blue.
Okay.
And between Earth and Venus, it was green.
Green lightning.
Yeah, supposedly due to the different types of plasma involved in each discharge.
Wow. That's amazing.
So yeah, that's how they think Venus got stuck here.
And all this has implications for the idea of Planet X, too, right?
Oh, yeah.
All those theories about a hidden planet or something?
Right. If our solar system is surrounded by this energetic barrier, like the electrical universe model suggests,
Yeah.
then a big planet couldn't just wander in.
Oh, interesting.
Anything we see out there like comets has to already be inside this bubble.
So Planet X is debunked.
Well, it makes it a lot less likely.
That makes sense.
And then all of that leads back to Daz Smith and the Grand Canyon.
Okay.
And his idea that a similar plasma discharge event, but on a smaller scale,
Okay.
could have created the canyon.
Wow. So not lightning between planets, but still some kind of huge electrical event.
Yeah, exactly.
That's incredible.
But, it gets even weirder.
Weirder than lightning between planets.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm all ears.
So they talk about this other alternative perspective that's a little less conventional.
Okay, less conventional how?
It's based on interpretations of like petroglyphs and indigenous stories.
Okay.
And they seem to describe this global cataclysmic event.
It's a cataclysmic event.
Yeah, that happened at the same time as a great war.
A great war. I guess like a war between who?
They don't really specify.
Okay.
But anyway, this war scorched the earth and also froze it in some places.
Wow, scorched and frozen.
Yeah, and in this narrative, the Grand Canyon was formed by a powerful plasma calling forth.
Okay, a calling forth of what's like this huge release of energy.
Okay.
But from inside the Earth this time.
Oh, wow. So not from space.
No, from within the Earth itself.
Wow, that's a completely different idea.
Yeah, and supposedly this blast of energy basically created the Grand Canyon.
And they say this is based on indigenous stories?
Yeah, they say these stories describe ancient battlegrounds.
Battlegrounds.
Yeah, all over the place, like the Sahara, Antarctica, and North America.
Wow, all over the world.
Yeah, they say North America got hit especially hard.
Oh, wow.
And they even say some of the people living in the Grand Canyon at the time were launched into space.
Oh, launched into space by this energy blast.
Yeah, that's a pretty out there theory.
Yeah, that's way less scientific than the lightning bolt.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's still fascinating.
Right. It makes you think.
It really does.
And that leads into the idea that maybe there were multiple advanced civilizations.
In the Grand Canyon area.
Yeah, that existed way back in the past.
Okay.
The source mentions anecdotal reports of weird artifacts.
What kind of artifacts?
Like metallic components that supposedly came from the Mississippi Delta.
From the Mississippi Delta, how would they get to the Grand Canyon?
They don't really explain that.
Okay.
And then there are all the legends about buried treasure ships.
Treasure ships in the Grand Canyon.
Yeah, it's like they're hinting at some forgotten history.
Okay, so maybe there were these ancient global seafaring cultures
That's the edge.
who left all this stuff behind.
Yeah.
But they say there's not a lot of evidence for this.
No, not really, but it adds to the mystery.
Yeah, it does. Okay, so we've got lightning between planets and energy blasts from inside the Earth.
Yeah.
What else do they talk about?
Well, they get into how our minds might be playing a role in all of this.
Oh, interesting. Like how we perceive things.
Yeah, exactly like how we view the Grand Canyon's history.
Okay.
They talk about remote viewing.
Remote viewing.
Yeah, and how existing theories can actually influence what people see.
Oh, wow. So it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Kind of. They're asking if people like Bix Weir with his well-known theories,
Right.
if those theories are actually shaping what remote viewers see.
So instead of seeing the real past, they're seeing Bix Weir's version of the past.
Yeah, it's like there's this collective consciousness filter.
Wow, so it's not a purely objective thing.
Right, our minds can affect the results.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they bring up this idea that our minds cannot fail.
Our minds cannot fail. What does that mean?
It means that when we try to perceive something remotely, our minds will create something rather than nothing.
So if there's no real information,
Yeah.
we just make something up.
Basically. So when people are remote viewing the Grand Canyon,
Okay.
they might be subconsciously tapping into these popular theories.
Even if those theories are wrong.
Exactly.
That's trippy.
And it makes you think about that null target idea they talk about.
The null target.
That's when there's basically no physical reality to perceive.
So it's like trying to remote view something that doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it's super frustrating for remote viewers. And that ties into the idea that maybe the past itself is inaccessible.
Like we can't remote view it accurately.
Right, they say it's sealed off somehow.
So even with our minds, we can't really go back in time.
That's what they're suggesting.
That's really interesting.
And then they talk about time in a really interesting way.
Okay, how so?
They say the future is thick
Thick with what?
with timelines.
On the mind.
Yeah, constantly branching and unfolding.
Okay.
But the past is fixed.
So we can't change the past.
Right.
But the future is full of possibilities.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. That's a cool way to think about it.
It is.
Okay, so we've covered the Grand Canyon and some pretty wild theories about how it got there.
Definitely.
Now let's switch gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about this idea of medbeds.
Bedbuds, okay.
Yeah, and this whole concept of oisics.
Oisics, right.
So tell me about that.
So this actually came about as a response to what they call all the BS about medbeds out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially in the UFO community. People making all these claims about what medbeds can do.
Right.
So they're trying to ground the concept in something more concrete.
So this oisics is like the theoretical basis for how medbeds would work.
That's the idea.
Okay, and what's the basic idea?
So they start with this idea of the body's ontological blueprint.
Ontological blueprint. Okay, that sounds complicated.
It's like a fundamental template for your body.
Okay.
And they say it's constantly interacting with something called the ontological flux.
The ontological flux. Okay, I'm officially lost.
Yeah, it's pretty dense stuff.
But can you break it down a little?
Well, the basic idea is that our bodies aren't static.
Okay.
We're being recreated all the time.
Recreated like how often?
They say trillions of times per second.
Trillions of times per second. That's crazy.
It is.
So we're not really solid.
Not in the way we usually think about it.
So what's being recreated?
Our bodies are being recreated from this energetic template that exists in this flux.
So it's like our bodies are a constantly updating hologram.
That's a good analogy.
Okay, so where do the medbeds fit in?
Well, the medbed operating with these principles could actually interact with this flux
Okay.
and correct any errors in the body's blueprint.
Errors like what?
Any kind of distortion or imbalance.
Oh, so like if you have a disease or an injury.
The med bed could fix it at the blueprint level.
Wow. So every time your body gets recreated, it's healthier.
That's the theory.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing.
Okay, and then they talk about coherence optimization.
Yeah, that's a key part of it.
What is that?
So in this framework, illness and injury are seen as a loss of coherence.
Okay, what does that mean?
It means there's a disruption in the alignment between your body's energy fields
Okay.
and this underlying ontological flux.
Right, the flux of
So the med bed would generate these resonant fields.
resonant fields.
Yeah, to realign everything.
And that would promote healing.
Exactly. It's like tuning an instrument.
Oh, yeah, getting everything back in harmony.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing errors.
Right.
It's also about restoring this coherence.
Yes, that's key.
Okay, now they also mention localized etheric modulation.
Yeah, that's another important concept.
And what is that exactly?
So basically it means a med bed could target specific areas of the body.
Okay.
It's not just a one-size-fits-all thing.
Oh, wow, so it's really precise.
Yeah, it works by interacting with what they call etheric eddy-urns.
Etheric eddy-urns. Okay, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's like these localized disturbances in the flux
Okay.
that correspond to different parts of the body.
Oh, wow. So by modulating these disturbances, the medbed could heal specific areas.
Exactly, like repairing tissues or clearing blockages.
That's amazing.
And it's all done non-invasively.
No surgery or anything.
Nope, it's all energetic.
Wow.
Then there's phase-based healing.
Okay, phase-based healing. What's that?
Well, it involves manipulating the phase alignment
The phase alignment of what?
of the body's energy fields.
Okay.
And it happens during the recreation process.
So the medbed is like resetting the timing of your body's systems.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So everything is working in sync.
Right, and that could potentially address all sorts of problems.
Like chronic diseases and even degenerative conditions.
Yeah, they say it could heal almost anything.
Wow, this is getting more and more sci-fi.
I know, right?
But they're trying to ground it in science.
Yeah, it's based on this whole idea of the ontological flux.
Right. The flux.
Which is fascinating, even if it's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah, totally.
And here's another crazy idea they talk about.
What's that?
Energy amplification without external input.
Okay, so what does that mean?
It means the med bed wouldn't need to be plugged in.
What? It would run on what then?
They're saying it can draw energy directly from the ontological flux.
So it's like a perpetual motion machine?
Kind of just taps into this unlimited energy source.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Okay, so the medbed is fixing our blueprint. It's aligning our energy.
Yeah.
And it's drawing power from this flux.
It's a pretty comprehensive healing system.
It is. Okay, what else does it do?
Well, they talk about restoration of cellular resonance.
Cellular resonance. What's that?
So the idea is that healthy cells and tissues vibrate at specific frequencies.
Okay, like everything is vibrating.
Yeah, and when you're sick or injured, those vibrations get disrupted.
Okay.
So the med bed could recalibrate those vibrations.
Back to their healthy state.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all your cells are vibrating in harmony again.
Wow, that's incredible.
And then there's the most interesting part.
Okay, what's that?
They talk about integration of consciousness healing.
Okay, so our minds are involved somehow.
Yeah, they're saying our thoughts and intentions actually influence our physical reality.
So it's not just the medbed doing the healing.
Right, it's a partnership.
We have to participate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They even mention a consciousness interface.
A consciousness interface.
Yeah, so you could consciously direct the healing process.
Wow, so it's like a mind-machine interface.
Kind of like that.
That's amazing.
So the whole point of the medbed is to get to the root cause of the problem.
Not just treat the symptoms.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a completely different approach to healthcare.
Absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so what would a medbed actually look like?
Well, they list a bunch of potential features.
Okay, like what?
First, you'd have a coherent scanner.
To analyze your energy field?
Yeah, and then an etheric modulator for targeted healing.
Right. Adherent.
The ignorance.
Yeah.
And a phase synchronizer to reset your vibrations.
Okay.
And of course, a consciousness interface.
To plug your mind in.
And lastly, an energy resonator to draw power from the flux.
Wow. So it's like the ultimate healing machine.
It is. And if it could actually be built,
Yeah.
it would revolutionize healthcare.
Yeah, no more hospitals or drugs.
Well, maybe not completely.
But it would change everything.
Yeah, it would shift our whole focus.
From treating symptoms to aligning with this flux.
Exactly. And it redefines what health even means.
Right. It's not just the absence of disease.
It's about being in harmony with this fundamental level of reality.
Wow, that's deep.
Yeah, it's a whole new paradigm.
So you can see why these sources blew our minds.
Definitely a lot to think about.
We went from electrical discharges carving the Grand Canyon
Right.
to healing machines powered by the fabric of reality.
It's a wild ride.
It is. Okay, so final thoughts.
Well, after looking at all this, it makes you wonder what other geological formations
Yeah.
might have these non-traditional origins.
So not just the Grand Canyon.
Right. What about other weird formations around the world?
Yeah, maybe they were created by forces we don't even understand yet.
It's definitely possible.
And then there's the whole idea of med beds.
Yeah.
If our reality is being constantly recreated,
Right.
what are the limits of healing?
That's the big question.
Like, what if we could regenerate limbs or reverse aging?
Who knows what's possible?
It's mind-blowing.
Definitely.
Well, we encourage you to think about all this.
Yeah, do your own research.
Rewatch that YouTube interview.
And see where it takes you.
Thanks again for sending us these sources.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
And for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a great conversation.
See you next time.